Hi, I'm OKJ, and in 3 months I'll be taking my Chinese O-level exams for the very first time. Now, as a Chinese, I believe that one of the life events that I'll be forced to use my mother tongue is during a funeral. And I've always been curious about that, so today I have the pleasure to interview someone named Harmony T. At the same age as me, she has taken on the family business in this particular field, and so I'm curious to ask her a couple of questions, but also about her own relationship with Chinese as well. Okay, I just need you to help me count from 1 to 5 in your normal voice.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, wonderful. I've always wanted to do a chapter like this because as the eldest, I have the responsibility sooner or later for my parents. One of my key curiosities talking to you is that we see it in Singapore that our mother tongue proficiency is slowly and gradually getting weaker. But funerals, you're forced to now reconnect with your mother tongue because of that culture.
Yes.
And I was worried because my Chinese proficiency meant that I can only blindly follow whatever the funeral parlor or the priest say. But even then, I can't fully appreciate. And I was worried about that. Do you see that concern in some of the clients that you have, especially with clients getting younger and younger?
With clients getting younger and younger, definitely some of them, they are not as familiar with the Chinese language.
Or the rituals as well, like the 仪式, they don't know why something is done like that.
Yeah, so sometimes we try our best to translate to English for them so they are able to understand. But of course, I think the effect is not so much the same. They are not able to really understand what we are trying to convey to them. So we'll still do it in Chinese because there's still the 大厅 guangzong, meaning the public where there are relatives and friends who come for the funeral on the final day of the send-off, so they understand what is happening. The relatives and friends who are of a older generation, they might then teach those kids or the children like what we are really saying.
So now that you're doing this for so long, naturally your proficiency in both Mandarin and in dialects improve. Have you gained a new perspective that the younger Harmony didn't really appreciate about language?
Oh, in the past I used to think that Chinese is not so important because English is the international language, right? Like,
despite the family that you have, really?
Yeah, so because I did not expect myself to be in this trade in the first place. It was never in my mind, never part of my plan, but my Mandarin proficiency when it comes to speaking really improved after entering the industry because all my colleagues, my staff, they are mostly older folks who might not be very proficient or familiar with English, and a lot of them, they speak dialects if not Mandarin. So those families that I come into contact with to help with the funeral arrangements of their loved ones, a lot of them also only speak Mandarin. In fact, if I'm gonna tell them about the funeral packages in English, they might not even understand if they do not have their children to help translate for them. So because of the difficulty and challenges that I have faced, it has helped me to speed up the process of improving my Chinese. Yeah.
Everyone who I've met along my own Mandarin learning journey is that the language itself is seeped in culture. And once you appreciate the language, you get to access the rich history and culture that Chinese has to offer. Have you had that experience now that you've been working in this industry for, I think, close to 4 or 5 years, right?
Close to 6 years. Time flies. Yeah, so I would think that Chinese is a very special language because in just 4 words, you can easily express out a certain emotion or expression which English can't really offer. There are times when I do up the notices for the family members, when I receive a case at the hospital or in their homes, I have to ask what the decedent name is. And at times, they can only write it out in Chinese. And these Chinese characters are also needed to be placed in the obituary or even a notice that they disseminate to the friends and relatives. So I have to be able to write basic Chinese so that if they tell me what their name is or what the decedent name is, I'm able to write them down. And you have to be able to read the Chinese characters as well.
And now that you have had these 6 years where you are steeped into this rich culture of Chinese, learning from a wide diversity of people, right? People from different backgrounds, different ages. When you learn Chinese from them, does that give you a different kind of appreciation to the language as well as the wisdom that you can now access from their age and life experiences?
I think when I first started, it was quite difficult. So I mixed a lot of English terms, and then I had to slowly ask them, oh, what does this mean? And I think that's where true learning takes place, when you come from a humble spirit and lower yourself and not think that you know everything. Because the very moment that you think you know everything is when you don't know everything. I'm glad that I see the importance of this now, because like for example, we usually do guide the family members on things to say on the final day, so as to so-called have a closure for themselves for the loss of their loved ones. So usually we'll tell them to 讲好话啦，就是对往生者讲好话, meaning to say some good words to the deceased, to ask them to go in peace in Mandarin. And there are certain terms, for example, like we will ask them to do 世道. Basically, we will tell them to 道谢啦, means expressing of gratitude. 道歉, meaning apologizing to the decedent if in this life we might have, unknowingly offended or made the deceased unhappy, to take the last opportunity to apologize. And then there's also 道爱, where we express our love towards the deceased in the final moments. And last but not least, there's 道别. 道别 means farewell, where we bid our final goodbyes to our loved ones. So this 世道, I don't think you can really speak it as well when you do it in English, because it's more relevant when you do it in Chinese, and people in general, they are able to get into the mood and grieve properly with this being done in Chinese. But that's so far what we've experienced. But if we come across family members who are really more comfortable with English, we'll try to do it in English, but the effect is not so much the same.
Is that a tension for you as you continue on in this line of work, that sooner or later, if we don't find a way to encapsulate this or translate this in a way, then these rituals might lose a certain dimension?
I think for the near term, maybe 10 years, not so much yet, because people we're liaising with are still maybe in the 40s to 60s. So people of that generation, generally they're still quite proficient in Mandarin, and maybe in the next 20 years, maybe that will become an issue, because I feel that rituals and rites, right, they will be shortened in time to come. Even from 10 years ago, if you look at the rituals and rites, they are so much longer compared to now, where the duration is really shortened for ease of convenience. Because I think what people really look for, especially the youngsters these days, it's about the look, the aesthetics, the presentation, not so much about the rituals, the rites. And some of them, they even do away with all the rituals and go for a free thinker funeral instead, because some of them, they don't even believe in such rituals and rites that might be centering around the concept of filial piety. And I mean, even the priests, right, even those who are conducting the rituals themselves, they are slowly also phasing out, whereby there's no next generation to take over their roles. They are finding it difficult to get people younger to assist them, to learn the ropes from them, to handle such funerals. Because learning such rituals is not a one-day thing. You need to learn them over time through experience, and you meet different scenarios where you learn different things. Even after about 6 years in this trade, I'm still learning new things every single day. So I guess this is something that we will all have to wait and see, like what really happens. Yeah, 拭目以待。